Okay, so we're going to pick up where we left off in exercise 113. Some of you might be in slightly different places, but I'm going to pick up approximately where I left off last class, and I'll continue on with a piece of topo, making the stepping sides, etc. So in terms of where this kind of goes and how it hands off to assignment 102, what you're working on now is essentially what you're going to need for assignment 102. On Wednesday, you have to submit an AutoCAD file that means your AutoCAD's done, and then it's a matter of going to the laser cutter and actually starting to cut. On Wednesday, I will have a set of cardboard that I will put together to make one of these so that you can see how I glue it together and all the rest of it. Hopefully somebody here will have some tacky glue for me, but chances are somebody does. I've always had success with that. But other than that, last year I think they sabotaged it on me and the bottle exploded in the middle of the lecture. It was quite entertaining. They claimed it was an accident, but anyway. But I'll actually glue one together so you can see the process of gluing it together and kind of how it's made. So you'll turn in an AutoCAD file, post it before class on Wednesday, so your AutoCAD's ready. Then you'll start to schedule a time and go laser cut and then make it. And I forget, I think it's due a week from Wednesday, or maybe it's due the following weekend. I have to look at the sheet and see when the actual physical model is due. A lot of times people like to turn them in early. Once they're done and glued together, that's fine with me. Make sure you put your names on the back, though, and then I'll grade it and write your grade on the back. And then you can take it, or you can leave it until the end of the semester, in which case I'll toss them. It's kind of up to you. Most people like to keep them for the fun of it. There are some important things about how you glue it together and kind of the craft that helps. And I have some examples that are not so good and some examples that are good, and I'll show you the difference in class on Wednesday. So anyway, I'm going to continue roughly where we left off. I didn't save the file from last week, so this is a different file from last year. A little bit steeper terrain, but the concept is still the same. I have 2 of the stepping sides done, but I'm going to do 2 more of the stepping sides just as practice and reiterating the Seaplane method for how I would switch and actually draw this. And I'm going to go ahead and do a separate layer for each of the stepping sides. So I'll call this stepping 3, and we'll make that the active layer. And for the fun of it, we'll change the color of it. All right, and so I'm going to work my way up this side. But before I do it, I'm going to set my Seaplane back to the world top. So I'll go to Set Seaplane, World Top. So I go back to the very beginning. And then we'll come back to Set Seaplane, 3 points. And we'll start right there on that line. I'm going to go off in the Y direction, and then I want to make sure I go up in the Z direction right there. And now we can see that my Seaplane is set correctly. Now, when I'm going to draw these steps, it's confusing to look through this at my other lines. So I'm actually going to draw it from this side. Even though I'm on the inside of my terrain instead of the outside, it just makes it a little bit easier to draw. So I'll pick the polyline tool. I'll start at this first point. And again, it's just a matter of pulling down those snaps to create each of the steps. And so bear with me while I do this. As we go up this side. I find it easiest to pull down for whatever reason. Sometimes people like to do the opposite. It doesn't really matter whether you go up or down with the steps. They'll all end up in the same place. But you have to do what's comfortable for you. Getting really steep at the end here. Oops. Because I turned the corner. All right, let me back up one. There we go. And I'm just going to finish. Now, I have to do that one last remaining side, so I'm going to once again set my seaplane back to world top. So I'll click this little triangle, go to Set Seaplane, World Top, and then we'll go back to Set Seaplane, 3 points. And we'll start at this point, and I want to go off in this direction there. And then I want to go up vertically there, and now we should see my little grid. All right, it's on point. So now I can continue on, and again, easier to draw this direction, so I'll draw through my, and again, I'm not worried about the corners because we're going to come back and clean up the corners in a second. Now in this direction, I'm going back down, and I'm not nearly as fast, so I'm going to finish, come back down to the bottom, and do a separate set of lines in the direction that is quicker for me to draw. And there's nothing wrong with doing this as in sections like this, because a lot of times it'll make it faster. So that's done. Now we have to work our way back up this side, so we'll go the opposite direction here. Now remember, when I get a point like that, we're going to go straight across. Right, then I'm going to go back down, across, and then we'll continue on. Okay, so I've got both of those sides done. Actually, this side I didn't call it step 4, so let me go ahead and change the layer, and we'll call this stepping 4. Right-click, change object layer, and we'll make that another color so it's different too. And that color is really hard to see. All right. So I have each of those steps. So now once I have those steps in place, I need to pay a lot of attention to how the corners come together. And so we'll look at this first corner, and as we look at it, right, we can see that it steps up, but it doesn't step to this point because it hasn't reached another contour line yet. So what I have to do is I have to draw a line that goes straight out in this direction and a line that goes straight out in that direction. And a lot of times it's easiest to go back and set seaplane back to world top. And now those two intersect, so I can use a trim of these two lines, and I can trim there, and I get the corner of my model. All right, so let me take this, and we'll join those together so that they're all one line. And then we'll look here at the center. I have a valley, and I didn't go down for the valley. So I don't know off the top of my hand what my contour interval was, so let me look really fast here. Okay, it's 375 inches. Let me look at it in feet so that we can. Oops. Okay, decimal feet. 31.250. So I'm going to go back to my polyline, and in this case, I'm going to go straight down 31.250. But I'm not in a seaplane that I can draw straight down, so I'll do it in this front view. So 31.250. Oops, how about feet? 31.250 feet. There we go. Straight down. Now I can come over back up. And I did a terrible job with that intersection, didn't I? All right, let me go back down. And then we use that as a trim. There we go. All right, so now I can take this piece, this piece, this piece, and going up that side, up to this top. There. Perfect, and we'll join. Now if I look at this corner, right, we have a step that happens mid-corner. Right, so I'm coming down to that point. So what I need to do is I need to get to the next level down and then go over. So I'm going to go from here, right, down. So I'll go in my view here, 31.250 feet, like that. And then I'll come out in space, straight out. Now I've made that cross. And we can trim these two. So I'll take these, trim those off, and then this and this can then join together. And we should change all of those to the stepping 4 layer. Okay, so it steps down and then goes around the corner because the joint is right in the middle of that corner. Does that make sense? So it takes a little bit of practice to see how these corners come together. So let's come down to this corner. It looks like I've already drawn this corner in. For practice, I'll get rid of this. So once again, I'll go to my polyline, and I'm going to go down, which I have to do in the front view unless I change my seaplane. 31.250 feet. Straight down, and then we're going to come out like that. Then we'll trim, and we'll get rid of those two pieces there. All right, so then we come down to the very last. I'll check this at the bottom here to make sure I go down one extra. Good. And come up to this last piece. So I need something that goes down at this point. So we'll go 31. And remember, the 31.250 is what this contour happens to be. You might have a different interval based on that sheet. You guys remember the little handout? This one? It's whatever your value is on that sheet. All right, straight down, and then let me come across, and we'll zoom in here and do a trim. So that and that, trim, there and there. All right, so now I have all 4 sides, and I can take a little bit of time and join them together. So those are joined. Oops, I hope. There. That's joined. I should join it to this. Join. That one's joined, and this one's joined. So now I start to have to envision this as if I'm going to build this 3D model. Okay? So if I'm looking at this 3D model, I have a side and I have the steps, okay, along one side. So what I want to do is I want to take this side and I want to fold it down flat. But I want to draw out what the depth of this side is going to be so that I can actually kind of visualize what this model is. So it needs to be deeper than the lowest point. Right? So if I started, let's say at this corner right there, and I switched views into the front view, it doesn't matter, it's an arbitrary value, but it has to be deeper than this point. Right? So I could come over to say something like that. It's deeper. That will work. And I could come across, and then I can come up to this point right there. And I have perpendicular snap turned on so that it can snap perpendicular. And then I can trim this off right there. And so now what I've done, let me rezoom selected here. Is I've drawn in what one side would look like. Do you guys see how that worked? Okay. So let's go ahead and join these together like that. And now I'm going to continue with another polyline. This time I'll start at this point, and I'm going to go down. Oops, my mouse isn't clicking there. And I'm going to go straight back, and then I'll come up to this point, and I'll go down, and again, perpendicular snap, and I'll trim to get rid of that. And then we'll take that, and we'll join. And so I'm just working my way around the model. So we'll start at this point and go off into space over there. Back to that corner, down to perpendicular. And we'll trim there. And then let's take these two. Oops. My bad. There was an extra trim in there. Take this and this, join. Those are now joined. And then I have one last little loop to do from here down, over, and back up to right there. Oops. Having trouble clicking today. There we go. So now I have each of those sides, right, that have been drawn, and I can go ahead and I can join each of those sides to the steps that correspond to them. So I can take this set, I can join those together. I can take this set and join this together. I can take this set here and join it to this. Oops, wrong ones. Join. And then we'll get to the last side here. If I can click on it. There. And we'll join. All right, so now I have a curve that represents each side, right, of the final cutout object, exactly what's looking here, right? So if we're going to laser cut it, that's the step side that we need. So now I just need to fold it flat, and I have to be consistent with how I fold it flat, so I either have to fold in or I have to fold out. And so I think the easiest way of seeing this is to fold it out. So I'm going to use Rotate 3D. Oops. If I can type, which I can't today. And I'm going to go from here and fold that side out. We'll repeat the command, so I'll right click and we'll do this side and fold it out. Repeat the command, fold that out, and we'll repeat the command one more time. There we go. Okay, so now if I were looking at the top view, right, we'd be seeing each one of these sides, right, that represents one side of the model that I'd be ultimately making. Okay, so now it starts to get into actually making this into a file that we can laser cut. Okay, and so right now this is still really large in its scale. It's full size, right? So we haven't done any scaling down. But before we get that a little bit further, I want to spend time and get a couple more things set. And a couple things that I want to do. First, I want to create a layer, a master layer, and we're going to call this laser cut. Right? And then I'm going to create some sublayers, and it'll be cut and engrave. Okay? The cut layer needs to be red, and the engrave layer needs to be blue. Okay, so I have cut and engrave. All of these shapes here need to end up on that cut layer. So I'm going to change object layer so that they're on the cut layer. Perfect. And now I need to flatten out these topo lines. So I'm going to go ahead and just move, and I could use the gumball for this. Right? I'm just going to move those over there because I know what they look like. And now I need to take these from being in three-dimensional space to being flat. So what do I do to use that? I use the project command to get them all flat. So we'll start by going, we'll create a surface like that. Okay, it doesn't matter where the surface is in space. And I'm then going to, and we can put them on the cut layer for now. I'm going to type project, or I'm going to go up to curve from objects, project. select curves and points to project. I'll select my curves. There. I'll hit enter. Surfaces, and again, I'm doing this all in the top view. There's my surface. And so when I hit enter, it's going to project all those curves to being nice and flat, which is what I'm going to need. So let me go ahead and move that out of the way. We'll drop it over here for now. And now we're going to look at this in the top view. Okay? So if I were cutting this out, obviously I need, right, the border to remain cut. But I don't want every single contour cut out, because when I go to put this together, I cut every other contour. So if we look at one of the sides, you see how there's a contour line here, and I've cut there, and I've cut there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at what I think is the lowest point, which would be right here, and I'm going to select every other line as I go up. Right? So that one will be red, so this will be blue. This will be blue, this will be blue. And I'm going to work my way up. Now, if you have a really undulating terrain, it can be a little tedious to figure out which lines are going up and which lines are going down. Oops. The good news about doing this in lecture is if I screw it up, you guys will stop me and tell me I messed it up. So I've worked my way up that side. I didn't quite get everything up this side, so I have to continue over here, there. To there. Okay, so I have all of those set. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click and say Change Object Layer. And now I have alternating red and blue lines. So one's going to be an engrave and one's going to be a cut. Now before I can laser cut this, I actually need a second set. So I'm going to take this whole thing and I'm going to copy it over here. And so I have a second set, but this time I need the opposite to be true on the colors. Right? So I'm going to right-click on the engrave layer and say Select Objects. And then I'll hold down Control and deselect this set. So you see how that was an easy way of selecting just one set? Okay? I need to change the layers, but if I change them straight to the cut layer, then I'll have too many on the cut layer. So I'm going to create another sublayer. And we'll call this Cut 2. And then I can change Object Layer onto Cut 2. This has to be red. Okay, so now everything's red. But I can come back here to the cut layer. I can say Select Objects. I can deselect these. And we can make them on an Engraved 2 layer. Oops, that was not what I wanted. Engraved 2. Change Object Layer. I could also go through and reselect all the lines. It just takes a little bit more time to do it that way. Okay, so now I do need the outside border to be on the cut layer. So now what I have is two versions of my topo that look almost the same, except that the colors alternate. So if we look right here, I go red, blue, red. If we look at the same plot here, I go blue, red, blue. Right? So they're just opposite each other. And the way it ultimately works, and like I said, on Wednesday I'll show you how these things glue together. But basically we take the first piece from one pile and we take the second piece from the next pile. And it's kind of like shuffling a deck of cards where we're taking two piles and we're putting them together to make the stacks. Okay? So it's really efficient in its use of material. Okay, so now I have these pieces and I have these pieces that I'm going to ultimately use. So I'm going to go ahead and move these closer together so that they're not on top of each other. All right, so now I need to do a scale to get this down into its correct scale. So remember, it's still full size, but I know, because I used this little cheat sheet when I created my measurements of the rectangle, that this will ultimately be 17 inches, and this will be 11 inches. So all I have to do is a reference scale of all these objects. So I'll type scale. I'll start here. My scale factor or reference point, my reference point would be to right there. If my mouse would click. click, right? And now this, what used to be, and let me just look here. What used to be 3,400 feet is now going to be 17 inches. So when I do this, it's going to get really, really tiny. Okay? So in order to see it, I'm going to type Z and then S for selected, and I'll zoom back in. And so now this is no longer full scale. It's down at its correct 1 to 200 scale. Okay? So now, if I were to draw with a rectangle an 11 by 17, or excuse me, a 12 by 24 laser cutter bed. So if I said at 24 inches, comma 12 inches, I'd get the size of the laser cutter bed. And now it's a matter of putting these objects onto that laser cutter bed. So I can take this and I can say move, turn off ortho. So that'll fit nicely, right? I need a second one here. And I'm probably going to need 4. Let's move this onto the next one. Turn off my snaps. I don't need those on right now. Perfect. And now I need to start putting these pieces on here as well. So we'll put that there. Now, remember, I can rotate them, but I don't want to flip them. Right? I don't want to mirror them or anything because I want to keep track of which way they fold it out. So we can take this one, put it right there, and it looks like I'm going to have to take one extra sheet. Right? So instead of 2 sheets from the bookstore, I'll have to buy 3 for this example. And I'll put it there. These don't need to be engraves, they need to be cuts. So I'm going to change and take these and put them on a cut layer. And so now I end up with the files that are ready to go be laser cut so that I can actually glue this. So what you're going to do for today is create this AutoCAD file. This AutoCAD file happens to be what you're going to turn in for your assignment too. Notice that they correspond nicely to each other, right? So you have today to work on this. You do, however, need to create 2 posts. One is for your exercise 114, and one is for your assignment. So if you finish it all today and you have your AutoCAD file ready, that's great, but you still have to create 2 posts. Okay, so I have a record of it. So once I'm at this point, I'm going to select these, and I'm going to go to File, Export Selected, and I'm going to change this to be an AutoCAD DWG file. Right, and we'll give it a name. Let me put it on my flash drive here. Oops, helps if I'm in the right class. What's today? 214. All right, so we'll call this Topo 2015. And I'll go ahead and click on Save. When it comes up with this option, I can select default or I can use any of the 2004. Right? I could technically use one of the other ones, but generally if it's 2004, it's always cross-compatible to whatever's available for us. So I'll go ahead and say 2004 polylines. I'll go ahead and say OK. And save that. So that DWG file is what you're going to post today. It won't look very exciting. You don't even have a featured image for it. Right? It's just a DWG file. That's all you need. That file is exactly what you'll be able to go over and cut on the laser cutter. Okay? So it's designed to be very easy for you. The translations are easy. There will be technicians, and I need to talk to them about what their hours are, where you can sign up for a time slot to go ahead and cut. This is not an unknown project for them. They've done it semesters before. They will have some ideal settings for cutting the cardboard. I don't know off the top of my head what they are anymore. But you'll collect your parts, you'll glue them together, and then you'll hand me the finished model. Are there any questions? No? All right, so I'll turn you loose.